In a small hotel in Amarillo, Texas, room 313 was rarely rented. Not because of price, but because of stories. People said they felt watched. That a shadow would appear at the foot of their bed, but never move. Just stand there, breathing. One guest, a traveling salesman named Darren Cole, checked in for 2 nights. He never checked out. Housekeeping found him dead, sitting in the corner, his eyes wide open, his fingernails dug into the carpet, as if he tried to crawl away from something. There were no signs of heart attack, no signs of trauma. Only one thing stood out: the security camera in the hallway. From 3:13 a.m. to 3:17 a.m., the footage turned black. And in that silence, you could still hear something playing through the audio feed. A deep, wheezing breath. Story 3: The Farm That Screams. Abandoned for over 30 years. The Peterson farm sits outside a quiet Kansas town, surrounded by cornfields and silence. But silence is a lie. Neighbors report hearing screams at night, every full moon, like someone being dragged, or calling for help. But the place has been empty since 1982. The Petersons, a family of 5, disappeared without a trace. Dinner was still on the table. Chairs knocked over. Front door wide open. Police searched the property, but never entered the barn. One officer said there was something wrong with it. He couldn't explain. But when he stepped close, he could hear breathing coming from inside, even though no one was there. Years later, a group of teenagers dared each other to go in. Only one came back, and she never spoke again. Some stories are born from nightmares. Others are worse, because they're real, and they remain waiting in places you pass by every day. If these stories left you uneasy, good. That means you're still paying attention. Next time, we'll descend into the tunnels, where people go missing without sound. And sometimes, something comes back up. Subscribe, like, share, and remember, the scariest stories are the ones that never end. Not every scream has an echo. Not every disappearance leaves a trail. Some stories are swallowed by time. Others wait beneath the surface, whispering. Tonight, we open 3 more doors to horror that was never explained. Story 1: The Girl in the Drain. It started in 1986. A small town in Michigan. Rain was heavy that spring, the kind that made roads vanish underwater. 10-year-old Lily Carmine disappeared while walking home from school. Her mother waited by the window, but Lily never came back. Police searched the flooded streets, found her backpack half-soaked next to an open storm drain. Rescue teams searched for days, but the tunnels were a maze. And then they heard it. A soft voice echoing from deep underground. It sounded like a child calling. Help me! Help me! I'm cold. But no one was there. Only dripping water. And shadows that moved without reason. To this day, some claim that during heavy rain, if you stand near that same drain, you'll hear the voice again. Only now, it doesn't sound like a child. It sounds hungry. The man who came back wrong. In 2003, Jason Mallory was declared missing during a solo hiking trip in Oregon. 5 days passed. Search efforts failed, until he walked into a ranger station barefoot, covered in scratches, and smiling. But something was off. He wouldn't speak about where he had been. He didn't recognize his sister, or his own reflection. He kept saying one thing, over and over. That's not me. That's not me. That's not me. Doctors said he suffered from trauma, possibly dissociation. But 3 weeks later, he vanished again. This time from a locked hospital room. Only thing left behind was a note, written in his handwriting. But the signature was someone else's name, and no one knew who it belonged to. The Faces in the Fog. Coastal town in Maine. Fog rolls in fast and heavy. People get used to it. But not when the fog stares back. In 1971, 3 lighthouse keepers vanished without a trace. Their last radio message was one sentence. There are faces in the fog. They're getting closer. By the time authorities arrived, the lighthouse was empty. Table set for dinner. Chairs pushed out like someone stood up fast. No bodies. No blood. Just the heavy silence of sea air. Locals say the fog that night didn't roll in. It climbed. To this day, fishermen refuse to sail near that part of the coast. Because sometimes, you see figures standing in the mist. And they don't move. Even when the wind blows right through them. Not every mystery is meant to be solved. Some are meant to remind us that we know very little about what hides in the quiet. When you hear a voice you don't recognize. When the fog feels thicker than air. When something walks where it shouldn't. Don't look back. Next time, we listen to the final calls from people who were never found. And the strange things they said before they went silent. Subscribe, share, and remember, what's unsolved still watches. It was supposed to be just a weekend retreat. 5 friends rented a remote cabin deep in the Colorado mountains. No signal. No roads. Just trees, wind, and the cold silence of distance. They found the cabin untouched. Clean beds. Food in the fridge. But something felt wrong. The clocks inside all stopped at 3:17. Each one. Different models. Different rooms. Same time. That night, they lit a fire and sat around telling ghost stories. Just before midnight, someone knocked on the door. No footsteps in the snow. No sound before or after. Just 3 knocks. Slow. Precise. Deliberate. They opened the door. No one there. But in the snow were 5 sets of bare footprints. Each set matching one of them. Leading away from the cabin. Deep into the woods. As if they'd already left. Or were supposed to. The next morning, one of them was gone. His boots still by the door. His bed still warm. Only his footprints missing. In a hospital in Ohio, a man was admitted in 1994. No ID, no memory. Just one sentence. I fell through the cracks. Doctors tried to evaluate him. But he kept repeating that phrase. I fell through the cracks. I was there, now I'm not. I was there, now I'm not. He refused to sleep. Cried if the lights were turned off. Eventually he stopped speaking. Except once. He looked directly at the night nurse and whispered. Don't step there. You'll fall too. That same night, the nurse vanished during her shift. Her shoes were found by the elevator. Both standing perfectly still. Upright. Like she'd evaporated inside them. In a small village in Norway. There's a house that no one lives in. But every night at 1:09 a.m. its windows light up from the inside. Just for 7 minutes. Locals say they see silhouettes walking room to room. Shadows holding candles. Even though the house has no electricity. 2 teenagers tried to film it once. They entered just before 1 a.m. The last frame of their footage shows them laughing. The camera facing the front window. At 1:16 a.m. the camera was found on the ground outside. Still recording. Pointed at the door. Inside. There was no one. Except When you slow the footage, frame by frame, in the reflection of the window, you see 5 people standing behind the teens. Even though the room was empty. What's worse, one of the figures is still watching the camera. After the others disappear, they were recording a podcast in the basement of an old building. No windows. Just a single flickering bulb. The topic that night: urban legends that turn out to be real. At 47 minutes in, the audio starts to glitch. A low clicking sound. Then heavy breathing. None of them noticed it during the recording. But the waveform changed. Like something was whispering between their words. Not layered. Inserted. When they tried to edit it, their software froze. And the file duplicated itself. Each new copy had a different time code. And a new title. The last one read: "Don't speak of me again." That file wouldn't delete. Even after they wiped the drive, it showed up again. On their phones. Their laptops. Their cloud storage. One of the hosts went silent. Deleted all social media. Moved away. When asked why, he said only, "I think it heard us." A man woke up to knocking on his front door. No one there. He locked the door. Went back to bed. Then the knocking started again. This time, from the inside. He searched every room. Empty. He turned to check the mirror in the hallway. And saw someone standing behind him. Still. Just a shape. No face. He turned around. No one. But the mirror still showed him. And something else. Something taller. Getting closer. Frame by frame. Every time he blinked. That mirror is still in his house. Covered now. He refuses to break it. Because he says, if it shatters, it might get out. At a nursing home in rural Wisconsin, the night shift started finding strange drawings on the walls. Not done in ink, but in ash. Symbols. Circles. Spirals that led to nothing. Security footage caught one of the residents standing in the hallway. Completely still. For 2 hours. Then, without moving, the drawings began appearing around her. When they asked her about it, she said, "It's just the floor plan of what's underneath." The home was built over old tunnels. Collapsed decades ago. They were sealed for her safety. But recently, there've been sounds at night. Scratching. And voices calling names that no one has spoken aloud in years. She woke up to the sound of water running. But her apartment had no plumbing issues. She followed the noise to the hallway. The light above her buzzed and dimmed. At the end of the corridor, a door that shouldn't exist. One she had never seen before. It was cracked open. And inside, a bathroom with no mirror. Only a tub filled with black water. As she stepped closer, the water began to ripple. And something began to rise. Not a hand. Not a body. Just a face. Her own. But smiling in a way she never had. She slammed the door and ran. But the hallway had changed. Longer. Darker. And now, there were more doors. Each one whispering her name. In 1978, a family of 4 moved into a lakeside cabin. Remote. Peaceful. No neighbors for miles. Every night, the same sound outside the window. A low humming. Like a song without words. Coming from the trees. They set up a tape recorder. Captured it. When they played it back, the humming grew louder. Turned into breathing. Then into voices. And finally, screaming. They tried to leave the next morning. But the road was gone. Replaced by thick forest. even though the map said it was a straight shot to town. The last thing they recorded was someone knocking at every window. At the same time, a train conductor in northern Canada reported seeing someone walking the tracks. In the dead of winter. No jacket. No shoes. Just a pale figure ahead of the train. Always just out of reach. He hit the brakes. But the figure never reacted. Never turned around. When they investigated, they found no footprints in the snow. Only a single word. Scratched into the rail in rust-colored marks. Again. The conductor quit the next day. Left everything behind. Said he kept hearing the train whistle. Even in silence. Even in his dreams. And sometimes. From inside his own home. She received a voicemail at 3:11 a.m. No caller ID. No message. Just silence. And something faint in the background. A dragging sound. Like something heavy being pulled across concrete. When she played it again the next morning, it was gone. Her call log didn't show anything from that night. But the voicemail was still there. Labeled. Tomorrow. That night, the lights in her house flickered. And when she checked her phone again, there were 5 new voicemails. Each one. Just breathing. A research team in Antarctica disappeared in 1999. All communications went dark. Their final transmission lasted 6 seconds. Static. Then one of the scientists whispering. The ice isn't dead. When rescue crews arrived, they found the station perfectly intact. All equipment functional. Meals left half-eaten. Jackets still hanging on hooks. But the snow around the outpost was melted. In a perfect circle. As if something had breathed there. Something warm. Something enormous. None of the team was ever found. But one camera was recovered. Frozen. Its last image showed something massive. Just barely visible. Beneath the ice. In a motel room off Route 19. A woman checked in alone. Security footage showed her leaving the front desk. Walking to her room. Then stopping. Turning. And staring directly at the camera. She stood like that for 7 minutes. Eyes wide. Mouth slightly open. No movement. Then the tape cuts. When the staff entered her room the next morning, it was empty. But the mirror was shattered from the inside. And every piece of glass had her reflection. Still staring. Still frozen in that moment. They say if you pass that motel at night, sometimes the lights in room 6 turn on by themselves. And someone's face, not yours, looks back from the bathroom mirror. He was walking home from a night shift. Same route he always took. 10 blocks, quiet neighborhood, no street lights after midnight. This time, the walk felt longer. He passed the same house 3 times. Same broken mailbox. Same porch light flickering. He started running. But the street looped again. And now the windows of the houses were boarded up. Even though he swore they hadn't been moments before. Then he saw it. A figure standing under the street lamp. Still. Facing away. But its shadow stretched toward him. Longer than it should. Like it was reaching. When he blinked, it was gone. The next morning, he woke up in his own bed. But his shoes were soaked. And covered in gravel. As if he'd walked all night. Through somewhere that didn't belong. In 1982, a family moved into a farmhouse in Iowa. There were rumors. The house had been empty for decades. But nothing unusual. Until the youngest daughter began drawing things. Things no child should know. Blueprints of rooms that didn't exist. People with no eyes. Hallways that twisted in impossible directions. She said she wasn't drawing them. She was copying them. From where? No one knew. Until one night she disappeared. And every one of her drawings vanished with her. The only thing left was a single paper taped to the wall. A staircase drawn in charcoal. Descending forever. With small figures on the steps. Each one holding a candle. Each one smiling. They say if you look too long, you start to hear footsteps behind you. A man in Tokyo claimed he could hear the thoughts of the people around him. Not voices, but intentions. Dark ones. He said the city was too loud. Everyone was thinking things they would never say. He began recording audio from random street corners. He captured whispers. Names. Dates. Things that hadn't happened yet. But then did. One recording contained only silence. But anyone who listened to it became violently ill. And had dreams of being watched from inside their own skull. He destroyed the tapes. Moved away. No one has seen him since. But recently, a copy of that same silent recording appeared on a music streaming site. Uploaded by an account with no name. And no followers. The track is exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds long. And no matter where you pause it, there's always a soft voice saying, "Keep listening." The lights flickered in the old theater. Only a few people in the audience that night. A man sitting in the very back row. His eyes glued to the screen. But something was wrong. The film was repeating itself. The same scene over and over again. The same dialogue. The same action. Except the actor's face was changing. Slightly at first. But with every repeat, the smile grew wider. Eyes darker. The voice sounded more strained. Like it was becoming something else. The man in the back row didn't leave. Even after the film stopped playing. Even after the projector clicked off. And the theater emptied out. He was still there. Staring at the screen. Sitting perfectly still. When the theater owner came to check, the man was gone. But on the screen, a new image was playing. The man's face. Staring back at himself. And behind him, a shadow moved. A construction crew was building a highway in rural Tennessee. They unearthed a large metal box buried deep beneath the earth. No markings, no label. But inside, they found an old map. Faded and torn. But the lines were clear. The map depicted the town they were working in. But with roads that didn't exist. Buildings that had never been built. And a circle drawn around the area where they stood. When they looked up, they saw something strange. The sky above them. It wasn't the sky at all. It was the same pattern as the map. The lines intersecting. The circle right above their heads. Then the ground shifted. The road cracked open. And the box vanished. As if it had never been there. The foreman reported the incident. But the construction project was halted. No one could explain it. And no one spoke of it again. In a small town on the outskirts of California, a woman bought a mirror at an antique store. The shopkeeper warned her. It was special. But she didn't understand why. Until that night. When she looked into the mirror. It's not very good night. We continue the story. They found her car abandoned on the side of the highway. The door was wide open. But the seatbelt was still fastened. There were no signs of struggle. No blood. Nothing disturbed. Except for the strange symbol scratched into the dirt near the tires. She was last seen at a diner nearby. Waiting for a bus. But when the authorities looked through the security footage, there was no record of her ever entering the diner. Her purse was found on the ground outside. But the keys were missing. The most chilling part? The symbol on the ground. It wasn't from any known culture. But it was the same one that appeared on a tree in the woods near her house. The last place anyone ever saw her alive. In a small town in Texas, a couple bought a house on the edge of the woods. It had been abandoned for years. The neighbors warned them about the place, told them no one should ever live there. But they didn't listen. The first night they heard it. A faint knocking at the door. At exactly 3 a.m. They checked outside. But no one was there. The knocking continued for days. Until the door broke off its hinges. And they found a message scrawled on the wall inside the house. It read, "Don't let it in." The last time anyone saw them, their truck was parked outside. But the doors were open. And the engine was still running. A man took a photo of his daughter playing in the backyard. It was a normal afternoon. But when he looked at the picture, he saw something strange in the background. A shadow. Moving between the trees. A shape too large to be a person. Too black to be a shadow. He checked the picture again. But the shadow wasn't there anymore. It had disappeared. As if it had never been in the frame. The next day, his daughter was missing. The only clue left behind was the photo. And the shadow that seemed to grow darker with each passing hour. An old woman lived alone in a cottage by the sea. She had lived there for decades. Without much contact with the outside world. But something strange had been happening for weeks. Every night, she heard someone walking around the house. Slow, deliberate steps that echoed in the dark. She would wake up to find footprints in the dust. But no one was ever there. One night, she followed the footsteps outside. Down to the beach. Where she found a figure standing in the waves. Its face was hidden. But she could hear its breathing. When she got closer, the figure turned and disappeared under the water. But she never saw it surface again. A man bought an antique mirror at a flea market. It was cheap. Old. But something about it drew him in. The first night he hung it in his hallway. He couldn't stop staring into it. Every time he walked past, he'd see someone else in the reflection. A person he didn't recognize. He tried to ignore it. But it became worse. The figure started to move. It mimicked his actions. Then it started to smile. Every night, the figure in the mirror smiled wider. Until one night, it wasn't a reflection at all. But something staring back at him. A family moved into an old farmhouse. It had been empty for years. The place was perfect. Except for the cellar. They never used it. But they started hearing noises from downstairs. Late at night. Footsteps. Scratching at the walls. One night, the father went down to investigate. But when he reached the bottom of the stairs, there was no one there. He checked every corner. But the only thing he found was a small box. Labeled "Open Me." When he opened it, there was nothing inside. Just a single piece of paper. That read, "You've opened the door." In a hospital in Oregon, a patient was scheduled for surgery. He had been suffering from strange hallucinations for weeks. The night before the procedure, he saw something in his room. A figure standing at the foot of his bed. It had no face. Just a dark, shapeless mass. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching him. He screamed for help. But no one heard him. The nurses said his monitors were fine. He was perfectly healthy. The surgery was cancelled. But the figure appeared again the next night. And this time, it was standing right next to his bed. A group of hikers in the Pacific Northwest found an old, abandoned cabin in the woods. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. But when they explored inside, they found something strange. A set of chairs arranged in a circle. Each one facing the center. In the center was a single candle. Still burning. One of the hikers sat down, and immediately felt the temperature drop. The air grew heavier, and the candle flickered, almost as if something was breathing near it. They left the cabin quickly. But when they turned around, they saw that the chairs were now turned toward the door. Waiting. A man inherited an old house from his uncle. He never knew his uncle well, but he had always heard strange stories about the house. On his first night there, he heard someone crying upstairs. He assumed it was the wind or an animal. But the next night, it happened again. He decided to investigate. But when he opened the door to the upstairs room, he found it empty, except for an old rocking chair, slowly rocking back and forth. The crying continued. But no one was there to cry. In a quiet village in Scotland, there was an old church, and a rumor about a door beneath the altar. A door that no one had ever opened. One night, a man decided to try. He snuck inside after dark, and pried open the altar, revealing a small trapdoor. He descended into the darkness below. But as soon as he reached the bottom, he realized he wasn't alone. There were faces in the shadows, whispering his name, calling him to stay. But he didn't listen. He ran out of the church, and when he looked back, the door had vanished. As the dark quiets down, remember, the unknown is always lurking, waiting for the right moment. You've heard the whispers, felt the chill, and perhaps, now, you're starting to wonder if it's all just a story. But some things are better left undiscovered. If you want to keep exploring these chilling tales, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Click that subscribe button because tomorrow, something wonderful just might happen to you. Who knows, maybe the darkness will have a surprise waiting just for you. Good night.